Level 1. The moment something feels off. Your first paycheck feels off. Not obviously wrong, nothing dramatic, but there's something about it that just doesn't sit right. You look at the number once, then again. Slower this time, like maybe the first time you rushed it, like maybe you missed something simple that would explain everything. So you check again, then one more time. You pull out your phone, open the calculator, and start typing everything in carefully, almost too carefully. Each number, each digit, double-checking like you're trying to catch yourself making a mistake. But nothing changes. It still doesn't match. It's lower than what you expected. Not by a tiny amount you can ignore, but just enough to make you pause. Enough to make you sit there a little longer than you planned. Maybe you shift in your chair. Maybe you glance around for a second, like someone else might notice it too, but no one does. And the strange part is, you're not even angry. Not yet. You're just confused. It feels like you missed something. Like there was a step in the process that everyone else understands, but you somehow skipped. Like there's a piece of the puzzle missing, and somehow you're the only one who doesn't have it. But you didn't miss anything. No one ever sat you down and explained this. No one walked you through where that missing portion actually goes. There was no moment where someone said, "Hey, just so you know, this is how it really works." No warning, no breakdown, no conversation. It just happened, quietly, before the money even reached you. In that moment, that's the one almost nobody pays attention to. Not the job offer, not the when you're staring at a number that doesn't make sense and trying to figure out why. That's the first time you actually meet the system. Because technically, you weren't paid less than you were promised. It just feels that way. What actually happened is something else entirely. You stepped into something that was already running, something that was already taking its share, long before you even knew there was something to look for. And that feeling in your chest right now, that slight discomfort like something doesn't quite add up, that's not you being bad at math. That's your intuition catching something real. You're inside a game, and no one gave you the rules. And if you've ever had that exact moment where something felt off but you couldn't explain it, where you just sat there a few seconds longer than you should have, then you're already noticing what most people ignore. So before we go deeper into this, make sure you're subscribed, because once you actually see how this system works, you won't be able to go back to not seeing it. Most people don't stay with that moment. They move on. They accept it. They adjust. They tell themselves, that's just how it works, and keep going. Maybe they close the app, put the phone down, grab something to eat, and by the next morning, it's already gone, like it never mattered. They don't question it again. But if you've ever paused, even for a second, and thought, wait, what? If you've ever opened your banking app again later that night, just to check one more time, even though you already knew the number wouldn't change, then something already shifted. Because that moment, that wasn't the end of anything. That was the beginning. And what you just stepped into is a lot bigger than just a paycheck. Level 2, the illusion of progress. At the beginning, everything feels simple. You go to work, you get paid. You try to save a little. Maybe you skip a few things you don't really need. Maybe you open an investment account because someone once told you that's what responsible people do. And in the background of your mind, there's this quiet belief running. If I just keep going, eventually it will click. If I earn more, things will get easier. More income, that belief feels so natural, you don't even question it. And for a while, it actually feels true. Your salary goes up a bit. Maybe you get a bonus. Maybe for the first time, you feel like you're not just surviving anymore. Like things are moving. Like you're doing it right. You put in the effort, and something comes back. Clean. Simple. Predictable. But then, slowly, your income increases, but what you actually keep doesn't follow the same path. It stretches, then tightens. It grows, then pulls back again. Like something behind the scenes is constantly adjusting the result. You don't lose everything. You're not struggling the same way you were before. But you never quite feel like you're keeping as much as you should. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because it's not dramatic enough to trigger alarm. There's no moment where everything breaks and forces you to stop. It's just this slow, uncomfortable realization. No matter how much harder you push, something is always recalibrating the outcome. Taking a little more here, shifting something there, And you're left with this strange feeling. You're moving forward, but not as fast as you should be. That's when the belief starts to crack. Because what if earning more isn't the real lever? What if the system was never designed to reward effort the way you thought it would? What if it's not about how much you make, but how that money actually reaches you? And once that question appears, you don't lose it. It stays with you, quietly at first, then more often, because once you start looking at it that way, you begin to notice things you used to ignore. Level 3, same income, different lives. It starts with something small. You notice someone around you, maybe a coworker, maybe a friend. They earn about the same as you. Same range, same level, nothing special. But their life feels different. They're not stressed the same way. They're not constantly checking their account before making small decisions. Their savings seem to grow without effort, while yours feels like it resets every few months. At first, you tell yourself it's discipline. Maybe they're just better with money. Then you think, maybe they got lucky. Maybe they had help. But the more you pay attention, the less those explanations make sense. Because the gap isn't random. It's consistent. Same income, completely different outcomes. And that's when something shifts in how you see things. It's not intelligence. It's not luck. It's not even discipline. At least not in the way you were taught. It's position, where you sit inside the system, determines how the system treats you. That's the part no one explains early on, because the path was never earn more and win. It's layered. It has levels. And each level doesn't just change how much you make, it changes how much the system is allowed to take from you. So, the real progression? It's not about getting rich as fast as possible. It's about becoming less exposed over time. And at the very first level, you don't even have a choice. Level 4, no control, no leverage. You don't decide what to pay. You don't calculate anything. You don't even see the process happen. The number just shows up, already reduced. And at first, you accept it, because everyone does. It feels normal. It feels fixed, like there's nothing to question. But every once in a while, you pause. You open your banking app. You stare at the deposit. You refresh the screen. Once, twice, maybe a third time, even though you already know nothing is going to change. It never does. And slowly, something uncomfortable settles in. You're not actually paying anything. You're just receiving whatever is left after everything has already been taken. No input, no control, no say, just a system running quietly in the background, making decisions for you. And at this level, that's just how it works. No control means no leverage, and no leverage means no way to change the outcome. Level 5, the first crack. Then, not some dramatic life change, just something slightly different. You earn money outside the usual path. A side project, a freelance job, a client who pays you directly. Nothing life-changing. But when that payment hits your account, it feels different immediately. There's no gap, no invisible reduction, no silent adjustment before it arrives. It just shows up, complete. And for a moment, like you finally got paid. Fully. But that feeling doesn't last. Because a few months later, something else shows up. A notification. A number you weren't expecting. A bill. And suddenly, that feeling flips. Because now, instead of the system taking automatically, it's asking you directly. Clear. And money being calculated after you receive it. Automatic and manual. Taken and requested. And somewhere between those two, a new thought starts forming. What if this isn't fixed? What if the rules actually change, depending on how the money comes in? You don't fully understand it yet, but now you're curious. And that curiosity, that's where everything starts to shift. Level 6. The system. At first, it's subtle. You just start paying attention a little more than before. Small things. Details you used to ignore completely. The way certain expenses seem to matter more than others. The way timing changes outcomes in ways you can't quite explain yet. The way the system reacts when you do something slightly differently. At the beginning, it feels messy, like you're looking at something too complex, too scattered to understand. But you keep going. Maybe one night you're sitting at your kitchen table, laptop open, a half-finished cup of coffee next to you, cold by now, scrolling through numbers you used to avoid looking at, not because you suddenly enjoy it, but because now you need to understand. You start tracking things more intentionally. Not perfectly, but differently. And slowly, patterns begin to show up. You realize something most people never do. Depending on how it moves, depending on how it's used, the system responds differently. And the first time you test that, it doesn't feel like a big win. There's no celebration, no moment where everything changes overnight. It's quiet. You file something a little differently. You structure something a little more intentionally. You pay attention to a detail you would have ignored before. And when the final number comes back, it's lower. Not randomly. Not because you got lucky, but because you did something differently. And for a few seconds, you just stare at it, letting it sink in. Because for the first time, you didn't just move through the system. You touched it. You influenced it. You kept more than you would have before. And that feeling, it's subtle, but it's different because it doesn't feel like luck. It feels like control. And once you feel that, even once, you can't go back. Because now you know something most people around you still don't. The outcome isn't fixed. It reacts. It adjusts based on what you do. Level 7, changing position. And then, something deeper starts to shift. You begin to sense that there's another level beyond this. One where the changes aren't small anymore. Where the difference isn't just a few $100s here and there, but something that actually makes you stop. It doesn't start with confidence. It starts with a question. A quiet one. The kind that shows up when everything else is silent. Maybe late at night. Maybe when you're alone in your car after work. Engine off. Just sitting there a little longer than usual. What if the way I receive money is actually the problem? That question doesn't leave. It stays. For days. Sometimes weeks. You keep coming back to it. Until eventually, you do something about it. Not in a dramatic way. You don't wake up and flip your entire life upside down. You just... Maybe you open something new. Maybe you restructure something old. Maybe you stop relying on a single path and start building another one quietly in the background. At first, it feels uncertain. Like you're stepping into something you don't fully understand yet. Like you might be making a mistake. But then, the result shows up. And this time, it doesn't feel theoretical anymore. It feels real. You look at your numbers again. But this time, you don't rush. You go through them slowly, line by line. Then you check again. Because something feels off, but in a completely different way now. The gap is bigger, much bigger. Not a small adjustment you can ignore. Not something you can brush aside. Thousands. Money that used to leave, now staying. And for a moment, you don't even react. You just sit there. Maybe you lean back in your chair. Maybe you let out a slow breath without realizing it. Because nothing about your effort changed. You didn't suddenly work twice as hard. You didn't become a completely different person. The system didn't disappear. You just moved. You changed your position inside it. And that realization lands heavier than you expected, because it forces you to face something uncomfortable. This was always there, always available. You just didn't know. And from that point on, doing nothing doesn't feel neutral anymore. It feels expensive. Every structure you don't build, every option you ignore, they all have a cost. You just don't see it on a statement. Level 8. When money detaches from time. And from here, your thinking shifts again. You stop seeing yourself as someone who simply earns income. You start seeing yourself as someone who designs how income flows. Because once you change the path, the system changes how it responds. And then something even stranger starts to happen. Money begins to feel less tied to your time. At first, it's almost nothing. You wake up one morning, maybe you're brushing your teeth, half awake, and you check your account out of habit. Something moved. A small increase. Nothing dramatic, but you didn't do anything for it. You weren't working when it happened. You didn't initiate it. And yet, it's there. You tell yourself it's small. It doesn't mean anything. But then it happens again. The more it continues. Not because you're lucky, but because something you set up is now doing the work. You've created a structure. Something that processes income before it fully becomes yours. Something that influences how it's recognized, how it's counted, how it's treated. And at this level, the system isn't something you react to anymore. It's something you work around, something you align with. The reduction in what you pay it's coming from placement, from being in a position where the rules apply differently. And the longer you stay here, the clearer one thing becomes. The people ahead of you, they're not just earning more. They're operating in a completely different layer. Level 9, a different definition of income. A layer where income isn't always income, where money can exist, move, and be used without triggering the same. Something happens that doesn't make sense at all. You need money, cash, and instead of earning it, you access it. No new income, no extra work, no visible increase in what you made. And yet, you have what you need. Maybe it's a transfer. Maybe it's a line of credit. Maybe it's something you set up months ago, something you barely thought about again. But now it's there because it feels like there should be one, like something should show up later. But it doesn't. That's the point. From the system's perspective, nothing happened. No income, no taxable event, no trigger. And that's when it finally clicks. The definition itself has changed. You're no longer playing the game of earning and then being taxed on it. You're operating in a space where money can move without becoming taxable in the first place. And that realization, it doesn't feel exciting. It feels disorienting because everything you thought you understood about money, about income, about how the system works, it doesn't apply the same way anymore. Level 10, the game beyond you. It's like you've been playing one version of the game your entire life, and suddenly, you're looking at a completely different board, different rules, different outcomes, and just when you think you've reached the highest level, you realize something else entirely. The most powerful move doesn't even happen while you're alive, because at the very top, it's not about how much you keep. It's about what happens after you're gone, how things transfer, how they continue, how they avoid being reset. And by the time you see that clearly, you understand something most people never do. This was never just about earning more money. It was about understanding the system deeply enough to stop being shaped by it and start shaping how it affects you. And if you made it this far, and something in this changed the way you think, even slightly, don't let that moment pass like the first one did. Stay with it. Subscribe. And more importantly, tell me in the comments, which part of this felt the most real to you? Because that answer says a lot more about where you are in the system than you probably realize.